Welcome to Glendale Today. I'm Councilmember Ian Hugh, and I represent the Cactus District, which is the southern-eastern part of the city of Glendale. I'm at a special location. It's known as Manistee Ranch, which is registered on a historical site. Growing up in Glendale, we all just refer to it as the Sands Farm. And with me is Louis Sands IV, or as you grew up in Glendale or anywhere in Arizona, you call him Buzzard Sands. And he has his experience growing up here at the ranch, and we're very fortunate to interview him. Buzz, why don't you tell us how we got the name Manistee Ranch in Glendale?
My grandfather moved down to Glendale, or originally to Flagstaff, from Manistee, Michigan. And that's where he had grown up, and his father before him, my great-grandfather, who'd immigrated from Sweden, as a matter of fact. But at any rate, they moved out here because, having come from Manistee, that he elected to rename this ranch the Manistee.
Was your father born here, or did he just move here with the family?
That's a good question. My dad was born here on the site, as well as my Uncle John and my Aunt Marie. All three of them were born here. And I don't know where the doctors come from to take care of things like that, but at any rate, they were all born here.
Yeah, people realize when this was, the family moved here, this wasn't in what would be considered Glendale or the town of Glendale either. It was out of town.
It was way out of town.
It was way out of town when I grew up in Glendale.
Yeah. And you're a whole lot younger than me.
Yeah, we were arguing who's the youngest earlier. But we'll talk about you growing up here at the ranch. You attended the oldest grade school, which was, we called it Unit 1. You didn't even have to call it Unit 1.
That's exactly right. My dad, as a matter of fact, went to Unit 1, as well as my aunts and uncles, and then went on to Glendale High School. And they all went to the University of Arizona, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
From here.
Which I know you also did.
Yes.
So how'd you get to school in those days?
The best way to do was walk, because we'd just walk across the alfalfa fields. We always had a few cattle, so we kind of were a little bit, beware of some of those mean cattle. And then we'd go by bicycle, and then they had an old school bus that must have been a vintage 30s. It was basically all wood with a canvas top on it. And so we would take that from time to time. Growing
up here, I know you had some odd pets. You talked about your Uncle John had a parrot, and also tell us about the pet javelina. And you could recognize it.
My Uncle John, somewhere along the lines, they discovered this very small javelina, and they raised it from a pup. But they used to keep it in the cold periods down in the basement of this house. So that time we had a fuel-fired heater. Somehow or other, the critter backed into the heater, and it singed its whole rear end off. So it was a pretty easy to spot javelina later on. It got so ornery and started biting everybody that it wound up in a museum over in a zoo in Southern California. But my cousins used to go visit it from time to time, and they'd identify it, and they'd come running over to it, and they'd throw them some sort of bait or whatever. So for quite a number of years, they'd go visit this stupid javelina.
Yeah. You mentioned the coal fire, well, the oil burning furnace that you had. Tell us about how we had air conditioning back when you were growing up.
Well, I don't think anybody had too much air, but I mean, everybody just had these monstrous fans. Matter of fact, one of them was in this window pane right here. And the fan was probably about a 30-inch diameter fan. And that was about it. Same thing over at my folks' house next door. So, but it was much cooler. As you recall, with all the agriculture and everything else, a minimum of asphalt and concrete, so it was much, much cooler at night. As a matter of fact, the youngsters all slept up in the sky parlor, which is the third floor above us. And they would just have that bunks up there, and then in the night they just throw water on some sheets, and they'd sleep under the sheets, and that's pretty normal back in those days.